A few years ago, my friend Carter and I planned a long road trip to visit some of our old college friends. The distance was huge, around 15 hours of driving, but since there were two of us, we thought we could manage it in one long stretch. I started driving first while Carter relaxed in the passenger seat. After about 4 hours, we switched and he took the wheel. The plan was simple. I would sleep while he drove so I'd be rested for the next shift. But for some reason, I just couldn't fall asleep. No matter how I positioned myself, I couldn't get comfortable. By the time it was my turn to drive again, I was even more tired than before. Even though I was exhausted, I could still focus on the road. What I didn't notice was the gas gauge slowly dropping toward empty. Carter's old Chevy didn't have any warning lights or alerts, just a simple fuel gauge on the dashboard, and I hadn't looked at it once. Suddenly, the car began sputtering. That's when I realized we had run out of gas. Carter woke up immediately and grabbed his phone to search for the nearest gas station. Unfortunately, before we could even figure out a plan, the car completely lost power. I had no choice but to pull over to the side of the highway. It was around 1 a.m. and the area was completely empty, just flat land stretching out in every direction. No houses, no buildings, no traffic. Carter checked his phone again and said the closest gas station was about 4 miles away. We talked about calling for roadside assistance, but it seemed ridiculous to spend a couple $100s for something that could be solved with a short walk. Eventually, Carter volunteered to walk to the station and bring back a gas can while I stayed behind with the car. Within a minute of him leaving, he disappeared into the darkness. I stayed in the driver's seat, feeling stupid for letting the gas run out. A few minutes later, headlights appeared in the distance ahead of me. A car was approaching. As it got closer, I noticed something strange. It was moving extremely slowly. The speed limit on that road was around 55 mph, but the car passed me going maybe 15 or 20. I watched it through the mirror as it continued down the road. Instead of speeding up, it slowed even more, then stopped. A moment later, it made a three-point turn and started heading back toward me. That made me uneasy. When it passed again, it drove even slower than before, practically crawling along the road. It felt like whoever was inside was staring directly into my car. After passing me, the vehicle finally accelerated and disappeared down the road, but the entire situation felt wrong. I kept watching the road, half expecting the car to return again. My instincts told me something bad might happen. I grabbed my phone and called Carter to warn him, but the call rang all the way through without an answer. I tried again a minute later, still nothing. Now I was really worried. Without thinking too much, I decided to leave the car and try to catch up with him. It had only been about 10 or 15 minutes since he left, so if he was still walking, I could probably reach him by jogging. I locked the car and started running down the side of the road. The silence out there was overwhelming. There were no cars, no wind, nothing. Every time I stopped running for a moment, the only thing I could hear was the faint ringing in my ears. After about 50 minutes of jogging, I still hadn't seen Carter. Confused, I pulled out my phone and called him again. That's when I heard something unexpected. His ringtone, it was faint, but it was coming from somewhere off the side of the road. I looked toward the dark field beside the highway and noticed a dim glow in the grass. His phone. My heart immediately started racing. "Carter," I called out. There was no response. I stepped off the road and moved closer to the glowing screen. Finally, I heard Carter's voice somewhere nearby, but it was quiet and hard to understand. Then suddenly he shouted clearly, "GTDOWN." Without asking questions, I dropped into the tall grass. Seconds later, headlights appeared on the road behind me. It was the same car. The driver slowly passed by again, clearly scanning the roadside like they were searching for someone. They drove past, turned around, and came back again. This happened several times. They were definitely looking for Carter. Eventually, the car drove off and didn't come back. Once it seemed safe, Carter crawled out of the grass where he had been hiding. He explained what had happened. Apparently, that driver had pulled over beside him earlier and offered him a ride, but something about the guy felt extremely wrong. Carter refused the offer, and the man immediately got out of his car and started approaching him. That's when Carter ran. Instead of continuing down the road, he jumped into the tall grass and hid. While running, his phone fell out of his pocket, but he was too scared to retrieve it. The man apparently thought Carter kept running along the road, so he got back in his car and began searching for him there. After the car finally disappeared, Carter and I hurried the rest of the way to the gas station together. We explained everything to the staff and later reported the incident to the police, including a description of the vehicle. But the driver was never found. Even now, thinking about that night gives me chills. If Carter hadn't hidden when he did, things could have ended very differently. And one thing is certain, I never forget to check the gas tank anymore. This happened when I was driving back home after visiting my cousin in another city. The drive usually took about 5 hours, so I decided to leave late at night to avoid traffic. For the first couple of hours, everything was normal. The highway was mostly empty, and I had music playing quietly in the background. Around midnight, I noticed a pair of headlights appear behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's normal to see other cars on the highway. But after about 20 minutes, I realized something strange. The car behind me had been following at the exact same distance the entire time. Whenever I sped up slightly, it sped up too. When I slowed down, it slowed down as well. I checked my mirrors again. It was a dark-colored sedan. I couldn't see the driver clearly because the headlights were too bright. At that point, I started feeling uncomfortable. To test my suspicion, I changed lanes and reduced my speed. Within seconds, the car also moved into the same lane and matched my speed again. Now I was sure that car was following me. My heart started beating faster as I thought about what to do. The next town was still about 30 minutes away, and there were long stretches of empty road between exits. I decided to take the next highway exit just to see what would happen. As soon as I turned onto the exit ramp, I checked my mirror again. The sedan followed. That's when the situation became really scary. The exit road led to a quiet rural area with very few lights. I drove for about a mile before making another random turn onto a smaller road. Again, the same car followed. At this point, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Someone was definitely tracking me. My mind was racing. I thought about calling the police, but I wasn't sure how long it would take them to arrive. Instead, I decided to head toward the nearest gas station I could find. Luckily, after a few minutes of driving, I saw bright lights ahead, a small 24-hour gas station. The moment I pulled into the parking lot, I parked right next to the entrance where the cameras and lights were strongest. Then I quickly got out of the car and walked inside. Through the glass windows, I watched the road outside. The sedan slowed down as it passed the gas station, almost like the driver was deciding whether to come in or not. For a few seconds, it just sat there near the entrance. Then suddenly, it sped off down the road and disappeared into the darkness. The cashier noticed that I looked nervous and asked if everything was okay. I explained what had happened, and he told me I did the right thing by stopping somewhere bright and public. I stayed inside the store for almost 15 minutes before finally leaving again. The rest of the drive home was quiet, but I kept checking my mirrors the entire time. To this day, I still don't know who was in that car or why they were following me. But one thing I learned that night: if you ever feel like someone is following you on a dark road, don't go home. Go somewhere public where there are lights, cameras, and people. It might save your life. A couple of years ago, I decided to take a short solo camping trip. I owned a small camper van, and I liked driving out to remote places where I could park for the night and enjoy the quiet. That weekend, I chose a forest area that was known for being peaceful and far away from busy towns. After several hours of driving, I finally found a small dirt road that led to a clearing surrounded by tall trees. There were no other cars nearby. Honestly, that was exactly what I wanted, just complete silence and nature. I parked the van, cooked some simple food, and spent the evening watching the sunset through the trees. As night came, the forest became incredibly dark. The only light around was the small lamp inside my van. Around midnight, heavy rain started falling. The sound of rain hitting the roof of the van was actually relaxing, and I eventually fell asleep. I'm not sure how long I had been sleeping when a loud knock suddenly woke me up. At first, I thought it might have been a branch hitting the van because of the wind. Then it happened again. Knock, knock. This time it was clearly coming from the side door. My heart started beating faster. No one should have been out there. I was miles away from the nearest road. Then I heard a man's voice through the rain. "Sheriff's office, open the door." For a moment I felt confused. Why would a sheriff be out here in the middle of the night? I slowly moved toward the window and carefully lifted the curtain just enough to see outside. A man was standing there wearing a dark raincoat and a hat. Because of the rain and darkness, I couldn't see his face clearly. He knocked again. "Open up, I need to talk to you." Something about the situation felt wrong. I asked him through the door what he needed. He replied that there had been reports of suspicious activity in the area and he needed to check my vehicle. But the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. Why would a sheriff come alone into the forest during a storm just to check a random camper? I told him I would call the local police station first to confirm. The moment I said that, everything changed. The man stopped knocking. For several seconds there was complete silence outside. Then I heard footsteps quickly moving away from the van. I waited a few minutes before checking the window again. He was gone. The next morning, when the rain finally stopped, I looked around the area. That's when I noticed something disturbing. There were footprints in the mud around the van, but no vehicle tracks anywhere nearby. Whoever that man was, he had walked all the way out there in the middle of the night. I packed my things immediately and drove straight back to the nearest town. Later, I reported the incident to the local authorities. They told me something that made the situation even creepier. No sheriff or ranger had been sent to that forest that night. To this day, I still don't know who that man really was or what might have happened if I had opened the door. And ever since that night, whenever I go camping alone, I never answer knocks after midnight.